Hi all, today we're talking about Intel, and just over the last couple of weeks Intel was rumored to be acquired by Qualcomm, and then they talked about kind of buying the whole Intel and then just part of the company. Then it was rumored to be acquired by Broadcom, which kind of was not true. It signed a big deal with AWS. It got offer from the company called Apollo to invest in Intel. It got some money from US government. It released new GPUs. Well, actually, the graphic accelerators. We have a lot of news to talk about, and in this video we kind of wanted to make sense of all of that. So we prepared all the data, all the analysis, and hopefully you have prepared your likes and subscribed for this video. So push a like button and let's begin. Okay, so about a week ago there was a rumor that started circulating that Qualcomm is about to acquire Intel. Now our first reaction to that was it won't happen. Like, you can remember all of the big deals that didn't happen in kind of the last 6 years, for example, when Broadcom was about to acquire Qualcomm and the deal fell through, when Intel was about to acquire Tower Semiconductor and the deal fell through. Usually deals of this size fell through because of the regulators, either because of concerns for national security, that was the Broadcom-Qualcomm deal I think, or because of the regulators in 2021 when it was Intel and Tower Semiconductors. It was Chinese regulators I think who had problems with that deal. So this deal probably as it is won't happen, first of all because of the regulators, second of all it doesn't really make sense. So think of it this way: Qualcomm is a company with market cap of about $180 billion. Intel has a market cap of about $100 million. How would Qualcomm pay for such a deal? And the rumored price, by the way, is around 90 billion. So I can understand why this deal would be good for Intel investors, but for Qualcomm. So first of all, Intel has much more employees than Qualcomm. Qualcomm will have to just fire them. What to do with them? That's one thing. Second of all, how would Qualcomm pay for such a deal? So it can raise debt, but interest rates today are not very kind of susceptible to taking loans for $90 billion. It could do something which companies do, which is called stock for stock. So basically Intel shareholders would get paid in Qualcomm's shares. The problem there is that probably a Qualcomm board will not go for such a dilution of Qualcomm shares just to acquire a company which, let's face it, not very profitable right now and currently has a lot of problems, also has $50 billion debt on its books, so it doesn't really make sense. And after that we got some rumors that actually the deal is off the table. What's not off the table is that Qualcomm can try and buy a piece of Intel. And which piece exactly? Again, the stories kind of differ from one another. One story says that Qualcomm is about to acquire design of chips, the Intel's business, and the other says that it's going to acquire Altera. We will talk about Altera in a couple of minutes. It's super interesting company which Intel bought like 10 years ago. We'll talk about that a bit later. What was actually more logical and kind of made more sense is that Broadcom would go and acquire Intel. So if you've seen our video about Broadcom, we talked about them. It's a fascinating company. So Broadcom, what they do, they go and buy other companies and kind of know how to integrate them together into one subsystem. We call them the Berkshire Hathaway of semiconductors. They're kind of like Cisco in 2000s. They just go and buy different companies. So they did major huge acquisitions like CA Technology and VMware. They were good acquisitions which are now operating under the Broadcom flag. So we thought that Broadcom deal actually makes a bit more sense. They would know what to do with Intel, but pretty fast Broadcom said that the deal is off the table. They were just checking if it's possible to acquire Intel, and it's basically not very possible. So for now, Intel is flying solo, but kind of the rumors are out there that pieces of Intel can be bought. And I think it's a good thing because Intel, for how they are right now, they need to restructure and they need to understand where they are going. So I think one of the things Intel can do, and we will again talk about it later in the video, is to just become a manufacturer of the chips and kind of spin off all the design of the chips to some other company or to some other business, or just to, sell them out. I promised you to talk about Altera. So Altera, fascinating company. Intel bought them kind of 10 years ago for, I think, if I'm not mistaken, like between 14 and 15 billion dollars. So what they do is something called FPGAs. They design FPGAs, field programmable chip arrays. chips is something which is manufactured for some purpose. So for example, for gaming, for cars, for, I don't know, different purposes. And kind of you can only use it for this purpose. So Altera are creating chips which can be programmed for other purposes. So you can buy them for something and then reprogram them for something else. This company operates separately out of Intel, so they were not integrated into kind of big Intel. But right now we have rumors that Intel can possibly sell this company. The CEO of Altera came out in like 4 different news channels and said that this is not true, Intel loves us and we will not be sold. We'll see. The plans for the company right now is for them to go to IPO in 2026 and for Intel to actually have a lot of money from the proceedings of that IPO. So this is one of the companies that Intel can sell, for example. Next thing we need to talk about is Apollo Global Management. So there is this news that Apollo is about to invest up to $5 billion in Intel. And pretty much this is it. So we don't have any more additional data like invest and what. Intel would give them something in return. Intel would actually return them the money. So I did some digging. Apollo did some business already with Intel. A couple of months ago in July 2024, they have acquired, kind of weird deal, think about this. They have acquired 49% stake in one of the Intel fabs. So one of the factories where Intel manufacturing their chips. So there is one called Fab 34, it's in Ireland, and they have acquired 49% stake in this factory for about 11 something billion dollars. And now this company offers to invest additional $5 billion, and this is what we know about this deal. So this deal will not, of course, save Intel, improve their gross margins, raise their dividends again, rehire all the people they have fired, and all of the problems we know Intel have, but this can give them some money to invest in new products, new designs. We will talk about new products, new designs in this video. I know Intel had release of some cool stuff. We'll talk about that. But before that, we need to talk about AWS. And even before we talk about AWS, if you find this information valuable, press a like button and subscribe to our channel. We have more awesome videos on our channel and even more awesome videos coming up soon. Okay, now exciting part. Let's talk about partnership with AWS. So Intel this week announced that they have signed a partnership with AWS. Now get all the amazing details from this partnership. So according to the documents, they have signed multi-year, multi-billion-dollar partnership to design custom chips for AWS. What can we understand from this deal? First of all, AWS signed this partnership for, well, AI applications for data center, obviously, and they will use something pretty cool and something pretty exciting, which is called Intel 18A. So what is Intel 18A? Intel have a new, let's call it, technology to produce transistors, to kind of produce the building blocks of these chips, which they are releasing. And this technology is supposed to be even better than what Taiwan Semiconductors have today. We still did not get any new chips designed and produced by this technology, but as Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger said, I would bet the whole company on 18A. Now, I will pause here for a second. If you're Intel investors, you probably don't think a lot of good things about Pat Gelsinger and how he kind of manages the company. So I understand that you're kind of cringing on the phrase, I would bet the whole company on something, but he actually said that, and 18A certainly seems like an interesting thing. So Amazon deal with AWS is both kind of good and bad. The bad aspect of deal with Amazon is that they are hyperscalers. If you kind of follow the deals which hyperscalers had recently, they have so much purchasing power, the Amazons, Microsofts, and Metas of the world, that they can actually dictate the pricing of the stuff. So they order in huge bulk, and that's why the margins on these orders are actually low. Intel already has problems with gross margins, which are much lower than other companies. Just from the memory, I could be mistaken, but Intel, I think their gross margin in around 30s, AMD's around 50s, and Nvidia up there in the space. So Intel already has problems with that. Will this deal with Amazon save them and actually improve something? Probably not, but get that. Actually, a good point about this deal with AWS. In Q2, management of Intel said it would defer any additional investment in foundry business or in manufacturing business until the business receives advanced chip orders, which very strange thing to hear. It's like you're coming to, I don't know, Toyota dealership and you're asking if they have a new cars, and they telling you that they will not start working on new cars until they have a lot of orders for new cars. So it's kind of chicken and the egg problem, but in this situation, chicken actually got to Intel to help them produce the egg. So kind of the whole problem solved itself. So Intel will be producing chips for AWS, and it's a good thing because I recently signed a deal with Taiwan Semiconductors for its Maya 100. We're still holding to see with whom Google will sign. Now let's talk about US government. And this is the important stuff to talk about because US government is extremely interested to have Intel as a successful business. They're so interested in that US government have a special CHIPS Act. CHIPS Act is just a pump of $52 billion into the domestic semiconductor industry to support it and to stop relying on Taiwan for manufacturing. And of course, the major beneficiary of this act is Intel because they're kind of the biggest player and the biggest foundry in the US. So they are about to receive the majority of this money, of which Pat Gelsinger said in one of these interviews. They are already starting using this money. They have already invested $20 billion to create 2 new foundries in Arizona. And this is kind of my point, my main point about Intel and why this is a good thing to be Intel's investor. I think US government will not let Intel fall and will not let them kind of go bankrupt. US government very much needs Intel to continue manufacturing its chips. I don't think they need them for design of these chips, and I think they would be extremely happy if Intel took the design part of the company, sold it off, and just left with the manufacturing of the chips. And I think US government would actually support them. So if I would hold Intel stock, I would sleep soundly at night knowing that the full power of US government is behind me. Now let's finally talk about tech, because Intel had some cool stuff this week. So what they have is 2 things. It's Xeon 6 and Gaudi 3. We have talked about them in the previous Intel video. So Xeon 6 is mostly for data centers, which is a big part kind of Intel's revenue. Gaudi 3 is the graphic accelerator. Pretty similar. They're supposed to be competing with NVIDIA's Hopper, with their H100s, and with AMD's EPYC. Will they be competitive and bring a lot of money to Intel? We still don't know. We will know that probably the next quarterly report that we get from Intel. So these are all of the news from the last couple of weeks. Hopefully you get at least some kind of direction of where all of this is going, and hopefully this video was informative for you. If it was, you know what to do. You have a like button and subscribe to this video, and we will see you in the next one. Take care.